Hello, let's get started on our next writing lesson in our fiction writing unit. You are going to need your story planner today, and then also grab any writing that you've started or any blank pages that you have, because you are going to be doing more writing today. Also, if you can find that character sketch that you did with the bubbles around to tell things that you know about that character, go ahead and grab that too. Okay, so far on our story hand, we have told the characters who are in our story, the setting where the story takes place, and hopefully you were able to think of a problem that can happen in your story. The problem is going to make the story very interesting. Today we're going to work on filling in 3 events that can happen in your story. Now, fiction stories should have more than one thing happen in them to make them interesting. The problem makes them interesting, but the other things that happen also just help to explain the story and help to get your point across. You can have way more than 3 things happen in your story, but your goal is to do at least 3 things. And for our purposes in writing in this fiction unit in 1st grade at St. James Lutheran School, we are going to put each of those events on a different page. So if I'm writing a story about Matilda Moo, and on one of the pages I talk about Petey the pig wanting to have his birthday party, that's going to be a different page than when Mortimer the bull steals the dough and the cheese. That's going to be a different page than when Mortimer gives all the supplies back and he apologizes. I want to pull my story apart so that different things are happening on different pages to make the story longer, but it also helps to make it more interesting because I can add lots of details to each of those pages. Today I want you to think about the 2nd page of your story. For me, it was the page about Petey the pig wanting to have his birthday party at Matilda Moo's Pizzeria. That should be event number 1 on your story hand. So whatever you wrote yesterday on the 2nd page of your book, that's what you're going to write down on the event number 1. On the 1st page of my book, I just introduced my character and said where she was, the setting. On this page, the 2nd page, I'm telling an event. So Petey is the name of the pig in my story. I'm going to write Petey wants to have his birthday party. Remember, you don't have to write a lot of words. You don't have to write a complete sentence even. You could just write a couple notes for yourself. But one of the events, in fact, the 1st event in my story was that Petey wants to have his birthday party at Matilda Moo's. Whatever you wrote on that 2nd page of your story is what you're going to put on event number 1. The 2nd page of your story should have been talking about a normal day in the life of your character. So if your character is a giraffe that lives in the jungle and eats leaves from tall trees, then you should have introduced that character on the 1st page and then told about the normal day of that character on the 2nd page. So maybe a normal day for Jeffrey the giraffe is that he walks around the jungle and he says hello to his friends and he plays a game of tag with them. And then he goes and eats some leaves from a tall tree. Maybe that's just a normal day. The idea is you want to tell what's happening before the problem in the story. Okay, for event number 2, you can tell what would be happening on your third or fourth page of the story. And for me, it was that all the cheese and all the sauce and all the dough was stolen from Matilda Moo's Pizzeria, right? Maybe for you, it's a different type of problem. Maybe it's a quest kind of problem, like we talked about yesterday, or maybe it's a really silly, funny problem. For event number 2, you're going to just write what would happen next in your story, and that's probably going to be the problem of the story. If it's not the problem, that's okay. Just write down what would happen next in your story. So for my next event, event number 2, I wrote, all the supplies were gone. I phrased that a little differently than how I phrased my problem here. I wrote, a thief comes to steal Matilda's things. That's just a little bit different than what I said here. All the supplies were gone, but really it's the same thing, right? Now the third thing that happens in your story is probably going to be something that happens after the problem happens. It's probably not going to be the solution yet, because if you are writing across lots of pages, which is what our goal is, and you want to take a while to tell your story, you're not just going to tell the first event, the problem, and the solution, boom, 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 like really fast like that. You want to develop the story a little bit more and tell a little bit more detail. So after the problem happened in my story, I have a whole page about Petey and Matilda saying, I have a bad feeling about this, right? And then I have a page about Mortimer and the things, the ways that he's kind of being the bad guy in the story. He stole the stuff, but he's trying to make his own pizza. He's not very good at it though, right? And then I have another page about when he realizes what he did wrong. So again, I haven't solved the problem on any of these pages. I'm building up to the solution of the problem. So for event number 3, I want you to just think of the next thing that could happen in your story, but it won't be how the problem got solved yet. So for me, I'm gonna write event number 3 was that Mortimer tried to make pizza. Again, I don't have to write a lot. Sorry. I don't have to write a whole lot here. I just wrote Mortimer tried to make pizza. As long as I just have a few words on that little finger or any of these fingers, that is plenty. I just want to make sure that I have the notes in my head to keep my story going. Now, I have been teaching writing for a really long time, and so I already had this book written. You don't have a whole book written, so you are developing your story right now. You might not know all of the events of your story right off the top of your head. You probably have to spend some time thinking about what you want your character to do. Maybe that page where you sketched your character and you wrote some things that you know about your character, maybe that will help you kind of decide what you want your character to do and how you want the story to go. It takes authors and writers a really, really long time to come up with their story, and sometimes they end up changing it in the middle. Sometimes they think it's going to go one way and it ends up going another way. That's okay. That's why we edit. That's why we have pencils that erase and we have blank paper to start fresh from. It's okay if you think your story is going to be one thing and then it kind of develops on its own into something else. My point is that you just wrote down 3 events. You're probably going to have a lot more than 3 things happen in your story though, and the other events might surprise you as they come up. Today, your job is to finish writing on those 3 fingers, those event fingers, and then to either continue working on the first page. Maybe you didn't finish the picture on your first page yet, or maybe you didn't finish writing lots of sentences. Make sure you finish your second page. So again, maybe you didn't finish the picture on your second page yet. It can take a really long time to illustrate a story. And make sure you have lots of sentences on the second page. Then if you're done with those things, you can start on your third page. The third page might be where you tell the problem of your story, or it might not. That's okay too. But on the third page, you're going to make sure you have a really detailed picture and you have more than 2 sentences, just like we do on the other pages. All right. Next week is spring break, so we won't be doing writing lessons, but I will have you finish writing the solution to your problem when we pick this up again on Monday, April 13th, which is the day after Easter. So if you'd like to continue working on your story all during spring break, that would be totally fine. Or if you want to take a break on your story and not add anything to it until we get back together on the 13th, that's okay too. It's up to you because it's your book and it's your story. I will see you again after spring break. Have a great Easter.